Hi, I'm Orlando Alvarez, and I'm here to tell you about my grandpa, John Woodward. I find his life very interesting, and I hope you do too. He was born April 29th, 1949, in Hollywood, California. This was a baby picture of him. Little did he know, at birth, Hollywood would be the same city he would work in for 39 years. His father was a single dad and a carpenter. Juggling work and raising a 2-year-old wasn't easy. A lady named Doris came from New York to visit my great-grandfather's neighbor and fell in love with my great-grandfather. She became the only mother my grandpa ever knew, being his mom abandoned him, and she was a stay-at-home mom and took care of him and the 4 girls she had with my great-grandpa. They lived in Panorama City, which is way different from the overpopulated city it is now. Back then, there were orange groves, horses, and even some dirt roads. My grandpa had a huge love for horses and would often hang out at a ranch owned by Ralph McCutcheon. Ralph was a trick horse trainer, and his horses were also used for movies. This is like a stamp or a logo that would be printed on the side of the doors of trucks and trailers of Ralph McCutcheon. He would have taught my grandpa everything he knows about horses. He was basically a second dad and took my grandpa in as his own. They would teach horses how to rear, bow, chase people, and come when they were called from far distances. They had one horse named Fury that was probably the most famous horse, and it had his own TV series. Another famous horse, which is white, which is not common, was named Cotton. He was the first horse to be flown in a plane to go on location in Hawaii. Location is the destination where they are filming a movie or a TV series. This is the picture of Cotton in Hawaii, and they're unstrapping him. This is a picture of Cotton on the beach. Look, this particular movie was called Diamond Head. Training just wasn't for horses. Yet, Ralph also trained a Rottweiler named Root that was trained to sit in the driver's seat of his truck and keep his paws on the steering wheel. At all times, Ralph would steer from the bottom of the wheel and reach over to do the gas and brake. They would drive around town and even on the freeway with Root in the seat, making people do triple glances at them. They loved pulling this prank. The horse trainers were called wranglers, and there was a small group of them, but they were all pretty close and watched out for one another, which means I'll get back to a little altercation with the scary man. The next major step in my grandpa's life was getting drafted to go to Vietnam. When he went, he had barely turned 18 and ended up doing 2 tours. He was part of the infantry and an air traffic controller. He was part of the infantry, he was in one of 3 soldiers that would go ahead of the rest and see what lay ahead as a sniper team. Everything they did was confidential, and only the high commanders would know of their mission. He once got hit with a fragment from a grenade. He said it was such a high temperature that when he took it out, it scabbed immediately. He did the air traffic control from a hillside above a rice paddy. He said it was quite a challenge being there with the language barrier between Americans and South Vietnamese. And also, they would just come and go as they would like when they weren't supposed to. This made for a nerve-wracking situation, as getting shot, as dodging bullets and landing planes wasn't enough. This was a picture of my grandpa in Vietnam. After 11 months, 29 days, 14 hours, he came back to the U.S. I could not imagine going through all that and only being 18. I'm sure it haunts him till this day. When he got home, it was back to the ranch and work. After serving in Vietnam, he came back with a different mindset, and life was more valuable after being surrounded by horrific events. This is where the altercation comes into play. Ralph had a friend named George Spawn. He owned a ranch called Spawn Ranch that they would film movies on and rent out horses. Well, there was a group of people that were taking advantage of Old Man Spawn, perhaps because he was nearly blind. My grandpa was asked to go try and kick the people off of the land with a few other people. When they arrived and they were talking to the people to please leave, one of the guys pulled a knife. My grandpa and his friends felt threatened and left. If he didn't die in Vietnam, he surely wasn't going to there. That man turned out to be no other than Charles Manson and his cult, whom would get arrested months later for murder. So, Ralph got my grandpa into the motion picture business as a wrangler. A wrangler is somebody that works with animals. And in those days, it was mainly horses, being Western shows were extremely popular. The Westerns became less popular over the years, and he went into transportation. The transportation side of the studio is literally everything that has to be transported. People, cars, cameras, wardrobe, everything you can think of. He became a member of the local Teamsters 399 and stayed in the industry for 40 years. He worked on numerous TV shows and movies, taking him all over the United States, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. He was often the captain or coordinator, working countless hours, making sure everything got where it needed to be at all times of day and night. He did a few stunts as well. Had some small parts like a bank robber in Maverick, the driver of Chevy Chase's wagon in National Lampoon's Vacation when it flies off the road, towing Free Willy when they're going to free him, and dressed as a nun to drive a bus in Sister Act. My mom and her brothers even got a small part in Silverado since they had to go visit their dad in New Mexico since he was on location on Christmas. This is a picture of my mom and her brothers. That's my Uncle Jeff and my Uncle Tommy. My grandpa said his favorite director to work for was Richard Donner. When asked who his favorite actor to work with, he said Danny Glover. For an actress, Renee Russo and Angie Dickinson. He worked with Angie for a few years on a show called Policewomen. In all this busy time, he managed to get married Valentine's Day, 1973. This is a picture of my grandma and grandpa on their wedding day in Valentine's. My grandma had my Uncle Jeff, who was already 6 to a previous marriage, so my grandpa adopted him, and then had my Uncle Tommy in 1977, and my mom in 1974. They lived in Arleta, then moved to Acton, where they would have a ranch of their own. They had dogs, horses, sheep, pigs, and a couple of steers. Unfortunately, they ended up divorcing, but my grandpa lives in the same house to this day with his 4 dogs and 7 horses. This is a picture of my grandpa and me. Well, that was 69 years in a nutshell, and I hope you found it as interesting as I did. I definitely see my grandpa in a different light after engaging in a conversation that I would otherwise not know about if it wasn't for this project. Yes, I knew about the motion picture business and all the movies and stuff like that, but Vietnam, he never spoke about. Thank you for watching my video, and perhaps you can ask family questions and find out interesting family facts.